Today we're just going to start trying to connect expertise across Grenoble and across HDR UK. I'm going to stop sharing now and hand over to Walid from Grenoble. So thanks very much for joining us.
So just I would like to thank Sinead a lot, because we tried several times to see what we can do between Grenoble Alpes University and Swansea University, because we are a strategic partner between the two universities. There's a lot of collaboration in the domain of materials, physics, etc., and there's not a lot of collaboration between the health domain, humanities, etc. And I think the idea of the meeting was very great, because you will see, I will show you that that in Grenoble it's to do some research connecting to the artificial intelligence, and especially linked to health, humanities, etc. Okay, so thank you very much, and I will try now to share my slides. So I will be, of course, I have only 10 slides. The objective is to have some bridge between Swansea and University in this domain. I will give you the name of some specialists and some specific domain in Grenoble. So the idea now is to bring from the virtual meeting to a real workshop meeting if you think that it's very beneficial. Okay, so my name is Walid Rachidi. I'm professor in biotechnology in the Faculty of Pharmacy at the University Grenoble Alpes, and I'm the vice dean in charge of research and innovation in the same university. And today I want just to give you some idea why we do this virtual meeting at the beginning. The idea is to identify complementarities between the HDR Wales and the Grenoble University, to connect the artificial intelligence, health data, population health and biotechnology, build the foundation of a long-term strategic partnership, and to define concrete opportunities. So, for example, I list 4 opportunities, but of course, I think that Sinead and you have maybe other concrete opportunities from these opportunities, because we are also, as I said, the strategic partner with Swansea University. There's an opportunity to fund some joint PhD supervision, to do research and student mobility between our 2 cities, and to organize some thematic workshops. So for example, we can start a very interesting workshop about AI and health. Okay, so the University Grenoble Alpes, as you know, it's the Shanghai ranking. It's a kind of ranking, but still it's the more universal ranking. So Grenoble University is the top 150 worldwide university. It's one of the strongest research ecosystem in Europe. I told you that we have I mean, it's a very famous city for the innovation, because we are the #1 university in terms of number of patents. We are, for example, just to give you an example, ETH in Switzerland is the 2nd ranked, and Grenoble is the 1st ranked. And the strong culture of interdisciplinary research in AI, engineering, health, exposome, biotechnology. Next slide, please. So what is important in Grenoble, that we got what we call the MIAI Grenoble, which is a national AI cluster. So it funded in the France 2030, and it's one of the nine national AI cluster. We have a budget approximately about 212 million euro. It's for 10 years, and we have more than 450 people working on the AI, and more than 2,600 students per year. The strong focus are in trustworthy AI, the embedded and frugal AI, because due to the confidential data, and the generative and interactive AI. What are the key application area? We are, of course, focused now in health, but also in the AI, in the MIAI, there's another application, such as the industry 4.0 and 5.0, the environment, the AI and society, etc. And what is good in our national AI cluster, that there's more than 100 industrial partner and 17 AI labeled startups. So you can see that it's a hub of innovation, industrial and research. Next slide, please. So I will give you just an example about what are the main domain in AI and health. So as I told you that we have a lot of people working on health data science and epidemiology. There's a very good focus, and this is why I asked you the question on AI for medical imaging and biomarkers. For example, there's a lot of researcher working on MRI imaging and biomarker of some neurological disease such as Parkinson, Huntington, etc. There's a very good focus on multi-omics, genomics, functional biology, digital health and sensor technology, the environmental, we can see what we call the exposome and the population health. And finally, we have also some focus on ethics, algorithmic care, and society. And all of these ecosystem will bring us to do integrating AI from biology to clinics and to do population data. Next slide, please. So I will give you just a little example about my own research. I'm working on what we call the organoids, and the organoids are considered as biological avatars. So, for example, we can start. I'm very interested about the exposome, because, as you know, that the skin is in contact with UV pollutant, etc. And I study using what we call the skin organoids. So at the beginning, we can, for example, collect samples. Then we can study the biological signature using the proteomic, transcriptomic, and even metabolomics. Then we can reconstruct what we call the AI models, and then we validate these results and this signature in more complex model, what we call the organoids or organ on chip. And then we can translate this discovery, this biomarker discovery, to clinical validation on the population. So we worked in several kinds of skin disease, such as the cancer, but also the diabetic foot ulcers, for example, and the inflammatory disease. Next slide, please. So this is, I think, the most important slide, because I tried to put all our colleague working on this domain, and as you know, there's like 6 main domain. And the first one is imaging and biomarker, as I told you, and I put the name of the main researchers working on the domain. We have a researcher working on health data, pharmacoepidemiology, and big data. We have also colleague and researcher working on AI for sensing, robotics, and modeling, and I know that there's some collaboration with Swansea in this domain, which is the environmental and maternal health. For example, we have Valérie Sirou, who's researcher in INSERM, working a lot in the exposome, the omics, and she has a large cohorts. Nadia Al-Faidi, she has already some collaboration with Swansea, and she worked on pregnancy disorders and exposures, for example. We have also several people working on digital health and ethics. Just an example of Nicolas Villerme, he works on the motion analysis in order to predict, for example, the falling in old people, etc. And also, finally, we have also several researchers working on drug discovery and structural AI. And all of these domain will bring us to build, for example, with HDR Wales, a comprehensive multidisciplinary ecosystem. So we have a lot of researchers, as you see, working on the data, omics data, but also imaging data. And there's a lot of researchers in this domain working on what we call the trajectory. So they collect the data from the patient, and they predict, for example, the outcome if, for example, this patient will be at risk to develop cardiovascular disease, or, for example, diabetes, etc. And also, there's a huge focus on the neurodegenerative disease, focusing on the biomarkers and the MRI, for example, imaging. Next slide. So what we can have a synergy between HDR and Swansea and Grenoble. I think just as I put some idea. So for example, we can have a synergy area in AI and real world. For example, Frugal and embedded AI for Grenoble and population data from walls. We can have also synergy in the domain of organoids, which are the biological avatars of the population. So instead of doing study on the population, we can have a study on their organoids, which is our biological avatars and biological twins. So we can study, for example, the cellular mechanism to clinical and population level signature. The third domain that I identify that it's a real synergy is the exposome and the healthy aging, which combine the omics cohorts in Grenoble with Wales routine data. Then I put this, but we can discuss the imaging and omics mixture and the clinical data, and this kind of multimodal biomarker will have a high translational value, because we are not focusing on only omics, but we can put together the imaging, the omics, and the clinical data. And finally, maybe this domain could also interest you. It's the responsible and the ethical AI, because when we are treating data, we can be interested, of course, about the ethical AI. And this could be a joint expertise in implementation science, digital health, sociology, and AI governance. Next slide. So what could be the roadmap for our collaboration? Okay, we can start by virtual meeting to just expose what are our expertise, what are our domain, and where we can do some bridge. I think it's very important now to move, maybe when we have some contacts with our researcher, to move to the joint workshop, so we can imagine a generic workshop on AI and health, exposome and modeling, for example. Then we can have some joint seed funding, because as I explained from the beginning, Swansea are our strategic partner, so we can have some seed funding from our MIAI cluster, or for example from Wales Health Research. Then we can, in 2026, start to think about the co-supervisor PhD, because also in Grenoble we can have some PhD funded by the UGA, but also from Swansea. So it's a perfect condition to do co-supervised PhD student, and then we can start to think about joint proposal. So as you know, there's our national research called ANR, and yours is UK RI. So sometimes we have just read this is just some proposition for the funding. So we can also go to the Horizon Europe Cluster Health and MSCA, for example, doctoral network. And of course, we will need to be ambitious in 2027. We can go to the ERC synergy, because as you know, the ERC synergy, we need several expertise in one domain. For example, we can go from cells to tissue to organoids to patient to population, and this we can, I think, between Grenoble and Swansea, we have all the researcher, we have all the materials to go to this kind of very ambitious project, which called the ERC synergy. So we have, of course, several people that are expert, that have some expertise in this funding, and they can help us to go forward. And now, next slide. So this is the conclusion. So I think that between Swansea and UGA, we have a real expertise in health data and population health, organoid and mechanistic modeling, advanced AI, embedded, generative and explainable, exposome and environmental health, and ethics and digital health and innovation. So we have, I think, the teams, because I was really very interested about your presentation. You have a lot of data, etc. We have several expertise in complementary domain. So we have the team, we have the infrastructure, the expertise, and we have also at least a seed funding, because we are strategic partners between our two universities. So I propose that if you are okay, we can now try to have a bridge between our researcher and, for example, to have a real workshop in the future to try to build ambitious project. Thank you very much.
I'm going to talk today about a little bit about the HDR UK Wales expertise. So I'm Rhiannon Owen, I'm Professor of Statistics and I'm based at Swansea University. And before I share my presentation, I'd just like to thank Jim Rafferty and my team. I'll be showing some of his work today. And I think he's also on the call, so you can ask him any questions. Okay, so just before we begin, HDR UK Wales is a cross Wales initiative, and we have colleagues in Bangor who are interested in health economics. We have colleagues in Cardiff who are interested in clinical trials, amongst other things. But today I'm going to be focusing on the expertise that we have at Swansea University as part of HDR UK Wales. And this is our beautiful campus that you can see here. You should definitely come and visit. And in the interest of time, I couldn't go through all of the expertise that we have at Swansea or across HDR UK Wales, sadly. But I've picked up on the three key themes that I think are some of our strengths at Swansea. And in particular on the research data infrastructure, advanced analytics and co-production. Can I just check that my screen is still sharing?
Sorry, no, your screen's not sharing. You wouldn't put it back on again? Thanks. It's back on.
Fab. Okay, so I'm going to talk about these three key themes: research data infrastructure, advanced analytics, and I'll touch a little bit on co-production. So to start with the research data infrastructure, we have a lot of work going on in this space, and it's led by Professor Simon Thompson. One of the big components that we have at Swansea University is the Secure E-Research Platform, or SERP. And SERP is effectively a customizable solution for trusted research environments that can enable things like data linkage, data sharing, and analysis in safe and secure environments. And SERP is accredited to the highest possible standard. And some new initiatives that they're working on is including things like hosted trusted research environment solutions. And you can very much think of this as sort of renting a room or a personalized trusted research environment space within a host organization's house. So this means that you kind of avoid the costs and the operational requirements of setting up your own trusted research environments, and by tapping into this sort of existing infrastructure. So at Swansea, we have SERP UK, SERP Australia, and SERP Canada. So we're hosting this sort of linked data across a number of countries. And this sort of links on to a further initiatives that they're working on around creating federated networks of trusted research environments, which sort of enables safe data analytics at scale across a number of trusted research environments and/or data stored in other locations. Some other key infrastructures that we've got at Swansea include the Dementia Platforms UK data portal, which hosts the dementia cohort data. And I'll talk mostly today about the SAIL data bank, which stands for the Secure Anonymized Information Linkage Data Bank. So the SAIL data bank is effectively individual level data for the entire population of Wales, where we have these anonymized linked data sources. And you can see the types of data that we have on the right-hand side here. So we have things like demographic, mortality, census data, education outcomes, and social justice information. We have some disease-specific data sources, such as cancer screening, cancer registries, and cancer treatment. So SACT, for those of you who are familiar with the SACT database. And all of these can be linked at the individual level to healthcare records, including secondary care information, so emergency departments, critical care data sets, outpatient appointments, and all interactions effectively with our secondary care services. and our general practice information. So we can get things like medications, diagnoses, and just general interactions with community healthcare. We can get lab results, so we can get things like blood-based biomarkers, tumour markers, and so on. And this can be linked to Welsh Ambulance and NHS 111, which is our sort of triage service in the UK. And all of this is collected at the individual level, but we can also link to environmental data through anonymized residential fields. So we can get things like temperature, air pollution, humidity, distance to services, and so on. And because we have this residential linkage, we also know anonymously where people live, including whether they're in a care home. And also we can look at things like household dynamics from that. And a feature of SAIL that's particularly helpful is we can also bring in a custom data set. So if you're collecting data as part of a research project, you can bring that into SAIL and link it into the electronic health records of this routine data. An example of that we've got recently is we're collecting biosampling information from a cohort of pregnant women, and we are linking this in anonymously to their electronic health records for longer term research. I'll touch a little bit on that a bit later on. But at any one point in time, we have around 3.2 million people, and we have 25 plus years of good quality data, meaning that we have a much larger population size when you start looking back over the years, because we have new people coming in and out of Wales. But one of the benefits of the SAIL data bank is that we can get these sort of life course trajectories. So we get almost a complete picture of, at the individual level, of people's engagement with services, their diagnoses, medications, their results, and so on. But we also have a lot of information on their demographics, so we can explore things like health inequalities and access to services, including things like care home residencies and so on. So it can be used to answer an awful lot of research questions. And this brings me on to my next key area of expertise at HDR UK Wales, and in particular at Swansea. And that's in the development of sort of advanced analytics and their applications. So as you can imagine, the SAIL data bank and other data sources that we have here are very large. They are highly scalable, so lots of people, but we have a lot of information on those people, so they're also high dimensions. So to analyze this data effectively, it often requires some sort of advanced analysis. And at Swansea, one of the things that we're keen to work with are policymakers. So we tend to try to tailor our research for policy relevant questions. And this often requires things like probabilistic statements to be made. So what is the probability that a treatment is cost effective? What is the probability that we're going to improve outcomes by implementing a new intervention, and so on? And to get these probabilistic statements, but also, I guess, to inform our decision makers, we want to be able to capture the uncertainty that we have in our models, as well as in our data. And because we have this very rich data source, the relationships between the information that we have can become very complex. So one of the things that we want to do for our modelling is, I guess, have a very flexible framework that allows us to capture these complex relationships, which often require these shared parameter frameworks. So for those of you on the call interested in Bayesian methods, and I saw some people posting that they are interested in Bayesian methods, which is really, really great. Of course, this lends itself to traditional Bayesian approaches. But in general, the sort of simulation-based approaches like Monte Carlo techniques are intractable when we're dealing with this very large-scale data, both in terms of length and width. So one of the things that my team and I do is we're looking at developing these sort of hybrid models where we can utilize machine learning approaches to help us optimize this approach. And I thought I'd give you a quick example so you can get a flavour of the type of work that we do here. So one approach that we could look at is using stochastic variational inference. And I've done this quite visually just for you to get a feel So this is the posterior distribution that we're trying to estimate here, and because we've got large data and or maybe complex relationships, so we have potentially integrals that are difficult to integrate, we find that this problem becomes intractable. What we do have, though, is a set of variational distributions or a family of distributions that we can specify. And by that, I mean that we can define some variational parameters that help us describe those relationships, describe those distributions. And ultimately, what variational inference is doing is trying to find the optimal set of variational parameters and set of distributions such that it minimizes this distance or divergence between what we're trying to estimate and what we can estimate, if you like. And one such approach is the Kull-Black-Liebler divergence, but there are many, many others that we could look at using. So this is the sort of bare bones of what we've been working with recently. So looking at implementing this sort of optimization type approach into some of the Bayesian methods that we would typically want to use on smaller data sets. So just to give you an example of where we've used this and where we've developed models to help us with this, one of the questions that we had was trying to identify clusters of long-term conditions that result in increased mortality. So what we want to do is condition on an outcome of interest. So you can think about this as sort of semi-supervised learning. I guess classic approaches, we would use something like k-means to cluster, which would identify prevalent clusters or the most common clusters, and we would then regress those on the outcome to find out which ones of those resulted in increased mortality. But what this doesn't do is allow us to unpick those clusters conditioning on this outcome, particularly for rarer clusters. So to go through this visually with you, I've taken a very simplistic case where we've got socioeconomic status on the x-axis and we've got educational score on the y-axis here, and each point here is a student. Now these students are clustered, as you can see, with these different colours and different gradients that you can see on this plot. But imagine a scenario where we don't know what these clusters are or how these students cluster together, conditioning on their outcome of interest, their educational score. But we do know some other information about these students. So we might know where they live. So we could look at their latitude and longitude of where they live. And you can see that when you give this information, we can start to see these clusters unpick. And this is effectively what we're doing with Bayesian profile regression. We basically have two types of models. We have our mixture model, which is on your left-hand side, your mixtures being your latitude and longitude. And these are used to inform our response model on the right-hand side, our educational score. So these are just Dirichlet process mixture models, and we're conditioning on an outcome. In our case, it's mortality. And we do this using generalized linear regression models. But as you can imagine, because we've got this kind of this two-component model, we have shared parameters across these models that we want to try and estimate in a unified framework. And this lends itself to a Bayesian approach. But there are a couple of complications with using this, one being that we've got an awful lot of people, it's highly scalable, but we also have an awful lot of mixtures that we want to put into the model. So here, just as an example, we've got the probability that an individual has cancer and the probability that an individual has cardiovascular disease as our mixtures, if you like. But in reality, the dimensions of the number of mixtures that we're putting in these models are so large that it becomes a problem of both memory and scale. So this is where we've used our variational inference type approaches to help us optimize this. So borrowing from these machine learning approaches to help us optimize this problem. And we applied this to the SAIL data bank, we specifically looked at the Wales multimorbidity E cohort, which linked this demographic and mortality data with the health data sets for 3 million people. Once we applied our inclusion criteria, we applied it to 1.7 million people over a 20-year follow-up period. So again, very high dimensional data sources. And these are the initial findings from applying this model. And I just want to highlight some of the key findings here. So the cluster that resulted in the highest risk of mortality was a cluster where they had a high risk of cancer and metastatic cancer, but a low risk of all other conditions that we fed into the mixture model. But we also found a number of other clusters that also had metastatic cancer and cancer, but they also had a number of other conditions, things like hypertension, renal failure, and so on, which are potentially demonstrating a sort of treated and untreated population. So the treated population are getting these cardiotoxic effects from things like chemotherapies and so on. So this type of approach allowed us to unpick these as separate clusters in our modelling. And this was just an example of one type of model where we've applied some of these and developed some of these models, but we have applied lots of different models of this nature into different applications. So one of them being health technology assessment and looking at maybe clustering medications or medications-related harm. We've got applications to environmental health where we're looking at joint models, mental health with Anne John and the DataMind team looking at sort of disease histories, and the same for big data for complex disease. Gwyn leads inflammation and immunity where we're looking at some of this in respiratory infections, and Lucy Griffiths, who's looking at social determinants of health, where we've looked at how deprivation status impacts on some of these things. And Sinead and Lucy are also doing some of this work around maternal and child health. Each of these different applications, we're fitting different types of models, but with the same types of principles that we're using these machine learning approaches to optimize the decision. And finally, we also have expertise here in Wales around co-production. So this is sort of developing, planning, designing and delivering research with key stakeholders like policymakers and so on, and most importantly with our patients and the public. And this work is led by Michaela James at HDR UK Wales, but we also have the Sale Data Bank Consumer Panel led by Claire Newman. So we have this sort of consortium of patients and the public who are ready to input into the design and development and delivery of research. So that was a sort of whistle-stop tour of just some of the expertise that we have here at HDR UK Wales, and hopefully there's some time for some questions. Sinead.
Oh, brilliant, thanks a lot. Thank you. And so thanks a lot. Does anybody have any questions at all for Rhiannon? But we'll have a chance later as well if any questions come up.
I have one question, Rhiannon. So the perfect wow, there's a lot of things to be done with the Grenoble. My question is, do you have any data from the imaging, or it's more focused on let's say biological data? Do you have any imaging for the brain, for MRI, etc., or it's not just focused on the exposome and the biological data?
Yes, good question. So we have very little imaging data in the Sale Data Bank, but there are imaging data in some of the other data sources, so such as DP UK, Dementia Platforms UK. So we have some MRI imaging data for some of the cohorts there, particularly brain MRIs. But I am not familiar with that data, so I couldn't comment any further. I'm not sure if anybody else on the call is from DP UK or have worked with this data that could maybe add some more detail.
I think there's quite a bit of imaging data in there. And so if people were interested in that, we could definitely put you in touch with Emma Squires, who's running that.
Great.
And could tell you a lot more about it.
Great.
And I think there's a particular cohort that links in with SAIL as well. So there will be a cohort with these longer term outcomes that you can link. Also, it's just not for the entire population.
Sorry, Danielle, go ahead.
Just briefly, a practical question. Could you tell us briefly what are the conditions of access for the folks in Grenoble in terms of the data and the database?
So for that condition, it's very difficult because in the hospital we have a lake of data, but to access, you have a lot of you need to ask a lot of committee, ethics, scientific committee, etc. So for us, this is a very, I mean, very difficult to have access to the data, and a lot of researchers are more focusing on the collaboration with others. No, maybe Sandrine Müller, she's here, so she can give you some. But I don't know, Sandrine, if you can hear us, if you can comment about that.
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah, well, I mean, do you expect me to talk about like
No,
the
I mean for
collaborations I have?
example,
Or?
or for example, if we need some data from Grenoble Hospital, I said that the problem that we have some difficulty in France because you have all the you have several committee to ask, etc. So we have more collaboration with other partners to have this medical data. So I don't know if you want to comment.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, it takes a lot of time in France, and I think in terms of like infrastructure, it's very different in how it was designed. So it's not easy to link, for instance, when you have let's say an hypothesis in mind. And you want to link data. So for instance, I worked on variational base also in neuroimaging data, but that was in Switzerland. But I have connections there, and they are willing to also contribute in case, but it's not related to Grenoble patients. So it depends whether, I guess, you want to really focus on Grenoble patient or, but many of us have collaboration everywhere. And it's how we usually work in bigger consortium, and each consortium has their own hypothesis and their own kind of access to a piece of data within the hospitals across France.
Thank you. I'm just going to add a tiny bit more on for a few minutes about funding, and then we will have then we'll go to opening up for people's questions. So just to touch a bit more on the main Horizon call will be open in the 10th of February. Ideas, so that Walid, you've given us the topics, but if we want to focus on specific funding calls, ideas are, for example, the Addressing Disabilities to the Life course, innovation in healthcare for non-communicable diseases, development of predicting biomarkers of disease progression. There's also with the calls on for example, twinning is opening on the 9th of April, which is about building partnerships across different research institutes. As you mentioned, there's the MSCA, which is Pillar 1, basically about doctoral education, postdoctoral training. There's staff exchanges are funded, and that again opens in March with a deadline of October. So these are the things we could build towards. As you mentioned, the ERC calls and the different grants there, from starting grants to the advanced. Within Wales, we do have funding for pump priming to work with other nations. For example, bringing in Ireland for any larger European Union funding. So with Welsh Government will fund research looking at with EU regions, things that are moving towards a Horizon Europe fund. There's also the cost action funds, which is how with the work I've been doing was with cost action, and then going on to getting a larger grant. So I think that's one of the more successful ways of doing things. Within the UK, obviously, there's Wellcome Trust funding, which also it funds global research. So, and that can be led from France, led from the UK, anything on climate and health, which I think is something we, as a group across, have expertise and interest in. Infectious disease, discovery research. So that it gives funds across the globe, really. So it doesn't have to be just UK. UKRI have project co-leads who are international. And so there are multiple funders within the UKRI. Again, an area we can start targeting in order to start developing grants that may go for Horizon funding. And the British Council also puts out calls. And for example, with Grenoble, we have recently put in for the Springboard, which is between France and the UK. So these are all things that I think make it feasible if we have ideas that we start targeting. So these give us something to point at to if we start developing research development groups, which I think Walid has highlighted where those groups might be. And so we can now look at the funding and start bringing groups together in order to target one or more of these fundings. I think, Walid, you're already starting to look at one which is with Swansea, with Zoe in Swansea. So I think we're already getting some things off the ground as collaborations together. So I don't know if anybody has any questions, has any thoughts, any ideas about things you think, based on the groups that have been identified, as to where you think we would like us to start. Would you like us to start doing the environment or the imaging? If anybody has any thoughts on things they...
Or the omics.
Or the omics, yes. And yeah, and if people are happy, the name, if you put your name and your contact details, we will be putting that on the HDR UK website. We will be sharing that with people who have come here. And so we hope to try and promote collaborations and connections with people. So if anybody has any thoughts or questions at all?
I just wanted to add that we have some funding in our service to support meetings that will allow preparing the proposal. Sorry, Walid. So we can help organizing cross visit with people.
I want to ask. Yeah, I want to ask you, and sorry. I want just to ask you and Amina to explain that we have a possibility to have funding, because Swansea is our strategic opportunity. So thank you to do it spontaneously.
So that's all. We will be also happy to put you in contact, but I think that a good contact exists already between our service in charge of European projects and yours. So this for sure will make easier to build a very nice proposal, or several.
Yes, and I just wanted to say that I'm in charge of the administrative part of the partnership, while it is on the scientific side. And we have fundings in UGA and calls for projects. I have a list. I don't think that we have a lot of time to just show the list, but we will put it on the support so that everyone has a different calls for projects that we have in UGA. And of course, as a strategic partner, Swansea is we are eager to have you on board for those calls for project, to have fundings for the partnership. That would be great. Yes. So I'll share the 2 slides I don't think we have time right now, but we'll add it on the slide, Walid's slide, so that you have the whole presentation.
Sorry, I think that someone is wants to talk. Daniel Spagni has.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Just to briefly to recall that this, for those of you who have not been involved before, that this strategic partnership has been going on for nearly 10 years now. So there's an awful lot of history, practices, experience, etc. And there is in particular a complete suite of documents, contractual and otherwise, which are usually, as you know, in any type of research collaboration is always the problem of getting these things lined up. It takes time and effort. You've got a complete picture there. I mean, you are immediately operational within 24 hours. You don't need to actually worry about all these things. So the complete administrative setup is in place.
Keith, go ahead.
I was just double checking about. I feel like an interloper here because I'm neither from Grenoble nor Swansea.
It's bigger than us, really. It's to try to really develop collaborations.
Yeah.
And obviously, any of these grants need to be with different organisations, different institutions, different countries. So it is bigger than Grenoble and Swansea. It's very much. I mean, we're from Wales, so we very much want to work across Wales. We want to work across the UK, and we want to work across Europe if we're going to be aiming at European Union funding.
Yeah,
so,
no,
very much bigger than us.
I was going to say, and I think Daniel's just sort of alluded to. I mean, I've had a number of been part of a number of European grants, and it is very often the organisational aspects are much harder than the science. Yeah, I think collaboration is, and getting some good groups on board is really worthwhile. Thanks.
Yeah. So no, it is really to look outward and to try and bring together people interested in the same areas. And it's really to connect expertise, as the heading is really. I mean, you're saying about collaborations outside EU. That's the funding. So if we're going, for example, Wellcome Trust funding, absolutely yes. It's not fair to involve people and then say, well, there's no money. So it actually depends on what funding call we're going for. But absolutely, anything with the Wellcome Trust can go beyond the EU. And so it depends on the funder that we're applying to. But yeah, absolutely. From the immediate next steps will be to sort of share contact details of anybody who's happy with that, and to start developing areas where we can see there is a funding opportunity. We can then write to people who've put in there, this is an area they're interested in, to see if they'd like to, first of all, online, come together to develop research development groups with the intention of, where possible, having face-to-face meetings if it reaches the point of we're writing a grant together. So that's the next steps. Is there anything from others about what you think would be helpful to add to those next steps? Anything you'd like to see? Yeah. So, for example, sorry, go ahead, Rhiannon.
Yeah, I was going to say, once we've identified maybe shared areas of expertise or interest, we could start setting up some project-specific type discussions around that area. So kind of some brainstorming type things, because today has been a kind of whistle-stop tour of some of the expertise, but we can definitely get into some of the detail in separate, maybe interested party groups.
Yes, absolutely. So I would say imaging is one of them that we could start with. Omics, as you say, is another one we could definitely start with.
And
the environment.
The exposome and the infant, because I know that there's several collaboration with Nadia El Faidi and some groups in Swansea, but the exposome, it's a very important point also, and the health of the mother-child health, and the pregnancy.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think we've got 3 clear ones to go ahead with. And
Yeah.
Are you both happy for your slides to be shared with people? Because obviously it has all the names there on yours, Walid, and yours, Rhiannon, about if people want to contact those people, it gives an opportunity. So that's great. So the next thing is sharing contact details and letting people know where to find each other. Great. Thanks a lot. Thanks so much for taking the time. And talk to you soon.
Very much.